Yeah, look like
We
we're
on.
ready.
Okay. Good evening. I would like to call the special meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance?
Dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet this evening for the purpose of continuing the progress of our school district. Please help us to work together to move into the next semester with the common goals of excellence in teaching and learning. Help us to present a united vision of the future and allow us the opportunity to work as one in securing that vision. We are grateful to share our work with the dedicated men and women of this board, each of whom want nothing more than the chance to provide a bright future for every child we serve. We know that with your guidance, all things are possible, and we ask for that guidance this evening. It is in your name that we pray.
Amen. Mr. Long, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Ms. Voce.
Mrs. Acevedo? Here. Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Dr. Kraft? Mrs. DeFett?
Here.
Mr. Egan?
Here.
Mr. England?
Here.
Mrs. Dysart?
Here.
Dr. Lewis is not with us. Mr. Long?
Here.
Mr. Nicosia?
Here.
Mr. Warren?
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. Okay, tonight's special meeting was called to have the superintendent's evaluation discussed, and each of you have turned in your individual evaluation forms. So we will go into executive session in order to review the evaluation of the superintendent. So if there is a motion to go in executive session, there's a motion by Mr. Long, seconded by Mr. Warner. Is there any discussion concerning going into executive session? Okay, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. The board will now go into executive session. Thank you.
Paul said I gotta get through the minutes, I didn't have time today.
Good evening. We're now back in open session. Is there a motion to go into open session? There's a motion by Mr. Fata, seconded by Dr. Kraft. Any discussion regarding open session? If not, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 11-0.
Now we are in open session. We have been meeting, and sorry, we've been a while, but we've been meeting in executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation, and we can let the public know that the board is very, very pleased with Ms. Voce's leadership as superintendent of our schools, and she received a superior rating evaluation, which will be sent to the state. It is by law we need to evaluate the superintendent every year, and so this tonight completes the evaluation process, and the written evaluation will be sent to the state. Ms. Voce, on behalf of the board, we want to thank you for your continued excellent, determined leadership, and we're very, very proud to call you our superintendent, and thank you for all of your hard work.
Well, I just want to thank you, Mrs. Dysart, and the rest of the board members. You know, I'm truly blessed to be superintendent of schools here in St. Bernard Parish, and I've been in this system, as we all know. This is year number 43 for me. And it's been just a tremendous, wonderful experience. And I think I'm working with some of the best people that God put on this earth, our teachers, our administrators. Every member of our school board family has worked extremely hard. And I think that we've seen the fruits of everyone's labor in that our school system, from an academic perspective, is rated as an A school system. And our schools have consistently improved in the academic arena. But more importantly, I think that the school cultures that we see every day, the environments that our children are in, are just wonderful, warm, and nurturing places for children to learn. And I'm also extremely fortunate to work with each and every one of you. There are horror stories that I hear from other people sometimes across the state in terms of school boards that sometimes that have so much disagreement among themselves that they cannot form a clear and direct focus and vision for the communities. And we're very fortunate that we've got a school board who, while there may be some philosophical disagreements at times, as we all have, work as a united front to create a vision for the education of children in this parish and for the community as a whole. So from that leadership from y'all, then through us as administrators, I think our children are benefiting tremendously. I think the community benefits tremendously. And we have seen an extremely successful system in the last few years with facilities that are the best in the state. I think our teachers the best in the state, and our administrators are as well. So I thank each and every one of you for your dedication and the vision that you provide for us as we work toward educating our children and making this a #1 community here at St. Bernard. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
There's a motion by Mr. Faddis, seconded by Mr. Campbell. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please signify by saying aye. Aye. The special meeting is now closed, and if it's the will of the board, we will just go right into the committee meeting. Okay, the meeting's adjourned. All right. Now I'd like to call the general committee meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance?
Dear Heavenly Father, we gather in prayer this evening, grateful for the opportunity to pause and reflect on the approaching holiday season. We ask that you keep watch over our employees as they deal with the busy times before the holidays and with our students as they prepare to take exams. Please give each of us the spirit of joy and peace that is so abundant this time of year, and help us each remember the reason for the season. These things we ask in your name.
Amen. Mr. Egan, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Ms. Voce.
Mrs. Aceveda? Here. Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Dr. Kraft? Mrs. DeFada?
Here.
Mr. Egan?
Here.
Mr. England?
Here.
Mrs. Dysart?
Here.
Dr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Long?
Here.
Mr. Nikosha?
Here.
Mr. Warner?
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. First item on the agenda tonight is a request to appear. And here tonight with us is Ms. Nora Egan, and she's here to speak about the Christmas tour of homes. Good evening, Ms. Egan.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me again. On Thursday, we will hold our annual Christmas tour of homes, which is sponsored by the St. Bernard Volunteers for Family and Community, which is sponsored by the LSU Ag Center. This will be our 21st year, and over the years, we have raised over $200,000 for St. Bernard charities, and we're going to do something a little bit different this year. instead of doing a neighborhood with maybe 5 or 6 homes in it, we have been blessed with the Merrow Foundation offering us the beautiful Dockville Farm. And it will be a complex tour with, first of all, guided tours of the house, which will feature the Chalmette High School ambassadors, and they will do guided tours through the home. There will be someone in each of the rooms explaining the history, which is phenomenal, and beauty of all of the antiques and the Christmas decorations. The script for the ambassadors was done by the parish historian, Mr. Bill Hyland, and he did a fantastic job. Anyone that's interested in history should be there because it is going to be fabulous. From the house, we move on to the barns. In the large barn, we will have restaurants serving their specialties, and while people can purchase their food and dine, the school children of St. Bernard will be entertaining them with music, and we're looking very forward to that. It's going to be fabulous. And also, our 4-H kids will be selling soft drinks for the evening. So come out and have dinner with us, everybody. From there, we move on to the smaller barn, where we will have our Christmas boutique. We have artisans and crafters coming that are going to offer you some unique items to buy for either Christmas gifts or for yourself. And then in this, what they call the outdoor kitchen, there will be the Santa's Workshop and Village, the Christmas Village, which is just amazing. It's going to be a fantastic tour. It's Thursday, December the 12th. Here's a picture. I think I gave everybody one to look at, and on the back is the information about the tour. December 12th, it starts from 11 to 2 for the daytime tour, and from 5 until 9 for the evening tour. Now, at 5 o'clock, the food vendors and the boutique people will open so that if anybody wants to eat before they tour the home, they'll be able to do it. At 6 o'clock, the ambassadors start the tours, and they will go continuously on till 9 o'clock. We have a fabulous parade of prizes with, I would imagine, 100 items for people to bid on and hopefully be lucky enough to win one of them. And we are just so excited about this tour. There will be on-site parking, so no one has to be shuttled anywhere. There's parking for at least 300 cars at one time. So it is really going to be something else, and I invite you and the community to come out and support this. As you know, every penny that's raised stays in St. Bernard Parish and benefits our charitable organizations that we fund every year. So that's all I have to say. I hope everybody comes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Egan, and thank you and the organizations for always doing such a wonderful job. And as you said, whatever is raised stays in St. Bernard Parish. Y'all do a wonderful job, and on every event that you hold. But the Christmas Tour of Homes is always wonderful, and I'm sure
That's
this year
our special
will
project for the year. And, you know, it takes quite a while to put this together. We start probably in March working on the following year. So it's almost a full-time job to present this, but we want to do it so that people realize what a gem we have in St. Bernard to live in this wonderful community and to support all of our charitable organizations.
Well, thanks again for coming tonight, and thank you for promoting St. Bernard Parish.
I didn't
and
tell you the
helping out
price of the
schools.
tickets in
Oh, no.
advance, which you can get till tomorrow. It's $12, and after that, at the gate, you pay $15. Now, if you go in the morning and you say, gee, I'd like to come back, we're putting wristbands on everyone. So if you purchase a wristband in the morning with your ticket, of course, then you can come back in the evening for all of the candlelight festivities. So it's an extra special trip this year. Thank you so much for having me, and Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you. Merry
you.
Christmas. Okay, before we go to the first item on the agenda, I would just like to take a point of privilege of congratulating the Chalmette High School Cultural Arts Center. They had the Chalmette High School Variety Show last Thursday and Friday night, and every student who performed, they did an excellent job. There were dancers, there were so many wonderful musicians. The costumes were beautiful, the background, the lighting. Everyone who took part for this production did an excellent job. It was just wonderful. So congratulations to everyone. And that event, we know, took a lot of work, a lot of practice, and a lot of hard work to just coordinate it. So kudos to everyone involved in that production. And I know some of my fellow board members and Ms. Voce were there, and it just really made you feel so proud of all the talent that we do have here in St. Bernard Parish. Our students were great. Thank you. And all of the sponsors and the teachers and the Casors who helped did the costumes, and everything was it was first class. It was like a Broadway production. It really was a great thing. Do you want to say something, Ms. Voce, about it?
No, I think you covered just about everything. I think that what's really important to note was that everything that happened that night was was run by our students. The students not only did the acting and the performing, but all the technical lighting and sound. So it's a real learning experience as well as an opportunity to perform. And Kenny Kurth was our teacher who actually directed the entire production. And then each of our sponsors of our different group, and I hate to start naming people because I'll let someone out, but I hate not to. I mean, we had Jason Rusk, who's our band director, who's just wonderful, and Jill Mitchell with the Charmers, and Jessica Garbity with the dance group, and Annalise Cassar, assisted by her sister, Ariana, who worked with our chorus, and Pam Cassar, who with the costumes and such. And I'm sure I'm going to forget someone. We go down this path. But I know we have certain teachers that help. I'm not sure how involved they were. I know Miss Mellerine always plays the piano in different places, and Miss Turner helps out. Tom Duggar was a part of the production, and our Men of Penn as well, and Freddie Hebert, who handled the technical group. So it was just an effort by many of our faculty members, and then of course Mr. Warner and Miss Munn and the rest of the assistant principals there to oversee everything. So it's a major production. The Cultural Arts, Chalmette High School Cultural Arts Foundation that Mr. Carey, Albert Carey, has established, which he has endowed over $1 million, and a lot of the interest from that particular foundation, what he does is come at the end of the year to make that presentation. So he appeared as Santa Claus and contributed the foundation over $40,000 for the cultural arts program for the school. And it's just a tremendous, because it takes, when you look at the costuming and the performing and the sets, it takes not only a lot of time and effort, but a lot of monetary resources. And the Merrill Foundation always helps with those things as well. So it was a total school and community effort.
And it snowed, too.
And it snowed as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Voce. Mr. Campbell?
Yes, I want to say ditto to all that was said, but I'd like to point out Mr. Tom Duggar did a wonderful job. My being a former history teacher, to hear the history that he gave was really good. So kudos to Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Dr. Kraft?
Yes, I attended the Friday night production, and it was just sensational there. You just overwhelmed with the talent that we have, not only with the young people, but the professional people that were behind advising them and motivating them and getting the best efforts out of these young people. I think probably At any time, there's about 150 people on the outer stage and behind the scenes there, and that's a great number of people to have to corral and put it all in sync and make it happen. So everyone that was involved that made this the success it was, we certainly appreciate them and applaud them. Thank you for being there.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes, Saturday, I visited the Wow restaurant, and I heard it was Andrew Jackson's chorus put on a little presentation, and I didn't get a chance to get up and speak to the director, but she did a wonderful job, and those kids, wow, we've got a lot to look forward to with the talent that's coming up. And they did a wonderful job. I think Davies did a presentation prior to Andrew Jackson. So it's good to see our kids getting involved in the community.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Mr. Campbell, because all of our elementary and middle schools as well have sometime during these 2 to 3 week period either concerts, plays, musical productions, and they're doing it either at their school sites or at the Cultural Arts Center, depending on where they feel more comfortable with their students performing. And then throughout the community, everywhere you go, you see groups of our kids performing at the local restaurants, at the tour of homes, as Ms. Egan has pointed out, at openings of different businesses and such. I think we saw at the Gulf Coast trolley ribbon cutting this morning, and so our kids seem to be everywhere. And sometimes I just run into them by accident. But anyway, it's wonderful.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a building item. Mr. Campbell.
Update on the Homeless Center renovations, Mr. Carey.
Good evening. Let's see, how does this work? Homeless Center. Okay, so we're going to talk about the MoMA Center tonight. Jack Jackson and I met over there, and he took some photos, so it'd be easier to look at photos and just hear me talk about it. So here is the front. It's the old familiar face of the MoMA Center, but what's interesting in this photograph are the guys on the roof putting the new clay tile, so it's going to have that same red clay tile that it had before. If you notice there, the copper gutters are being put on now. So the finish work is now getting started throughout the building. So you can see them putting the tile in the old-fashioned way. It's only one way of putting it up, it's a really good tile that's going up. And this is going down Royal Street. We're looking at what will be the kitchen and the service yard. The concrete you see in the front is for a brick wall that will enclose that area, so you won't see any of the dumpsters or anything from the neighborhood. It'll all be enclosed. That piece of concrete is where the transformer pad is going to go, for instance. But it will all be closed with a brick wall with an iron gates in it. And this is going down LeBeau Street, and you can see the cafeteria, which will have a lot of glass, and then you're starting to see the planetarium. It's all framed. That's the siding they're putting on, the wood siding first, and then they waterproof the whole thing with that gray material, and then the metal siding goes on top of that. So, and you can see it's pretty well taken shape now. And then this is the view of what will be the bus drive connecting LeBeau and Friscoville. And that will be where the children will come. There'll be a covered walk next to the planetarium, and they'll be let out of the buses, and they'll be able to go into the lobby under cover from the bus drive. And there'll be parking along that way too. So that street, that parking goes all the way through to the two streets. So this is the new entrance into the building. What used to be that archway that connected the annex to the main building will be the new entranceway. That canopy will be completely made out of glass. That was one of FEMA requirements, that it be a glass canopy, so as not to detract from the arches. And then, of course, the arches will be filled in with glass with doors in them, and it will have the handicap ramps and lights, and this will be the main entrance into the building. So this is the new lobby. You're looking at the arches. We're taking from the view of the planetarium, and this will be where everybody will enter. There'll be a big information desk right where you see that box on the left. That will be where the reception desk will be. And then here's the same view, another view of the same lobby going into the planetarium. There's steps and then a ramp also going into the planetarium. And this is the second floor of the lobby. So and that goes, you can see, going into, cutting into the old building, and that's where the restrooms are going to be in there too. All new restrooms. So inside the planetarium, and you can see the step platforms for the seats, but what you can't see now is the dome that will be constructed, that will be on an angle to all of that and cover that whole area will be a dome where the projections will be. You enter the planetarium on the first level and then exit on the second level, so you can have one class going in as the other class is going out. And this is one of the big exhibit spaces in the annex. We reframed the annex, so we got rid of the walls so that you can have two big rooms that have open space like that for exhibits. On the second floor, if you look closely, you can see the original wood floor. Most of the second floor will have the original wood floor that was in the old building. What they don't have, what the floor that was missing, they took some of the old wood and remilled it so it will match all of the floors. So it will be like recycled wood from that building will go into the floors. You can see the floors, another one of the exhibit rooms, but you can see really plainly the wood floor, and it'll be beautiful when it's all refinished. And these, you can see the size of the restrooms. Remember, the old MoMA Center had little tiny restrooms, and these, and there'll be first and second floor, the nice big size restrooms. Now we're looking into the cafeteria from the second floor, and it'll be a nice size space, and with a kitchen. Here we're in the cafeteria now, looking at the kitchen area. There'll be the serving lines and everything, just, for when kids come here, when children come for not receptions, but for field trips, they'll have a place to eat. We're in the what will be what you're seeing now is a big mud hole, but it will eventually be the edible garden section of the school, of the science center. It will be all irrigated, and you can grow vegetables in there. Here's the old lobby. You can't really tell from the photographs, but the plaster on the plaster walls have all been repaired. They've gone back to the scored plaster that was there originally, and it's all been repaired now. And as I told you earlier, that section of the building will be painted by the same people who did the Sanger Theater, so it will be beautifully done when it's finished. Now we're going into the theater. You remember what it looked like before, and the plaster looks really bad, but it's all going to be taken down and replaced. But the arch around the stage is staying. The pieces that were missing, they either recreated or they found in the building. And the stage has been rebuilt, and it'll be painted by the same people who did the Sanger as well. You can see that the ceiling is missing. That's going to start. They had to put all the ductwork and electrical up in the attic, And now that's all finished, so they're going to start hanging sheetrock. You see the big piles of sheetrock that are going to go up into the ceiling, and then that painting that was on the ceiling originally will be recreated here in the theater. All of the light fixtures were sent off to be refurbished and relamped, and they, if you remember, they were kind of look like long, big Art Deco white fixtures. Well, now they're going to have an extra feature with light at the top that will light up the ceiling when the lights are on. And then this is look at the stage looking back, and those 3 windows are for the tech booths on the 2nd floor, where all the lighting controls will be, and also the movies. It can show film in here and everything. Let's see if I can go back, and I can remember how to go back. Yeah. And you see how it's set back, that sort of overhang? That's where all the seats collapse. They're electrically operated. And when you press a button, all the seats fold back into that niche, and you could have a big room to have dances or a party or something in. So you can see here is the auditorium from the technical booth. But it's moving along. I mean, the windows have all come in now, and you'll start to see windows. In fact, there were windows in this morning when I went there. So the windows are being put back. There are copies of the windows that were there. That was one of FEMA's directives, that we replace it with windows like the ones that were originally in there, except they're much better quality. They're insulated, and they're all pre-finished, so they don't have to be repainted. So that's where we are so far.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation. Any board members? Mr. Fadden?
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you, Mr. Carey. It's looking a lot more finished than the last time I drove around
Yes,
it. The planetarium just had the beams up, so now it's getting closed in. But it's going to be a fabulous facility, and I can hardly wait for it to be finished. We get lifetime passes. I mean, we can go. I can walk around the corner. You know, it's. But how is the completion date looking? Are we looking to be on schedule?
Yeah, it's on schedule.
It's on schedule, and that will be around
Summer, sometime.
of 2014. I told you, I can't wait to go.
Christmas.
Next Christmas, okay. Next Christmas. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Carey.
Nick will be there.
It's really is going to be a fabulous addition to our school system and to the community at large, and, so that they can go and attend the planetarium and the museum, and it'll be a wonderful educational tool for our school system.
There's so many interesting features in that building. One of the things, I showed you that garden, or that hole where the garden is going to be. Well, the architects designed the shed to hold the garden tools and like an outdoor pavilion, and it's going to have a small hole in the roof, okay? And on the floor, it will track the sun, so you can see the path of the sun all year long on the floor of that garden shed. So students can see
Very
how the sun
unique.
moves
Very
on each
unique.
day. Yeah, it's a neat feature of it.
That is great. Yes. Well, we appreciate you
No sun.
giving us an update on this. I know I had requested this, and I've been driving around it,
Oh, yeah.
but I haven't gotten out to walk through the site because it's a little
The site
muddy.
is really muddy now.
Yeah, it's a
But
little
now
muddy.
that the windows have come in, you'll start to see finished work being done.
Great. Thank you very much.
Mr. Warner?
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Carey, do you know how many seats will be in the planetarium and in the auditorium?
72 seats in the planetarium
72 in the planetarium.
and about 125 in the auditorium.
Okay,
It's going to be similar to the auditorium at the the small auditorium at the Cultural Arts. You'll have that kind of stadium seating, and that's what will collapse against that wall.
Is that, in the planetarium, is that about the same number of seats as we had prior to with the old planetarium?
I don't think we had that many.
We had No, we didn't have a,
No.
we had, I think it was between 35, 40,
Yeah, I think it
somewhere
was
around there.
still in the 30s, yeah.
Because you couldn't bring more than about a class at a time, and if I remember correctly.
Thank you, Mr. Carey.
It's too far back, Mr. Moore.
And it's going to be a projection planetarium, so it's not going to have that little machine in the middle that projects stars. This will be film projected onto that dome. So you can show anything on that, like under the sea as well as the stars and all. So it's a
I know we have a lot of students and older students like myself that are interested in going into the planetarium, so we can't wait.
Anyone else? Well, thank you
Okay,
again.
thank you. Okay. Oh, and if you go to Dockville, I'm going to be Santa again, so.
For the tour of homes, huh?
Ms. Stefano with the Education Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Education, we have an update on the Bessie Common Core transition policies. Ms.
I'm
Foche?
just going to do that.
Okay, Ms. Foche.
There's been a lot of activity in Baton Rouge in the State Department of Education and trying to work through the transition to the Common Core. Now, while the State Department officials have been working on it, the School Board Association and the Superintendent's Association, the leadership of both groups, got together to put forth some recommendations that we brought to our state superintendent, some of which he followed and others of which I think we're still in discussion. So what I have provided for you, and I'm one of the officers of the Superintendent's Association, so I was there meeting with Scott Richard, who is your executive director of the School Board Association, to come up with some common recommendations. So if you look at what I initially provided on page 2 of that press release, where it says, see recommendations that follow, with the School Board Association and the superintendents putting forth this in a joint effort. And I think both groups have supported the implementation of the Common Core. This was done quite a while back, and we all believe in the higher expectations and the increase in rigor for our students, as long as the curriculum to achieve those particular standards remains a local and state curriculum. And I think that obviously is where Louisiana is headed. We've had tremendous dialogue with Superintendent John White in many of these different areas, and I'd like to just work through them briefly with you. As a group of school boards and superintendents, we had a major concern with the assessment piece of the Common Core. With this year, the year 2013-14, the state keeping our own tests much more closely aligned to the Common Core, so it'll be an increase in rigor. But with the 3rd through 8th grade going to the PARCC assessments in the year 2014-15, we had recommended as a group to delay that implementation of the assessments and to keep our state assessment until all of the kinks were worked out with that national assessment. Many of the states have taken that pathway. While there have been 45 to 46 states who have adopted the Common Core, they've broken up into 2 consortiums for testing purposes. And the PARCC assessment, which is the group that we belong to, there were 19 states who initially said, okay, we will continue to test. And since then, 2, 3, 4 states have been pulling out. So when we talk about looking at how our students test in relation to the rest of the country, what we're going to get if we go forth with the PARCC assessments will be a comparison really with about only 12, 13 other states. So it's not going to be the same assessments throughout all 50 states. So we felt that until everything got settled with those national assessments that we were asking for that delay, because we didn't think the national comparisons then would be that appropriate, since it was really looking at maybe 14 or 15 other states. Bessie did not agree with that, and when you're going to see in a few minutes what actually happened at the Bessie meeting, we are going to be going to the park assessments in grades 3 through 8 in the year 2014-15. All right, the Common Core implementation itself, has been a lot of discussion statewide in that while initially when we made the adoption of the Common Core standards, the state of Louisiana was going to develop a statewide curriculum. And that plan was put on the back burner a couple of years ago, and they told us, no, you go ahead and do it locally. And what has happened is that teachers have felt, as well as district administrators, that the implementation has been done poorly. So because there was no common state curriculum that teachers could hold on to. So I think we've done a tremendous job in developing ours district-wide, but throughout the state there has been some checkered development. Some districts are much further along than others. So what we had recommended to him is that Louisiana take a step back and say, let's at least get some type of a guided curriculum, grade by grade, subject area by subject area in the 4 core areas. And Superintendent White has said that in January and February there will be a guide book coming out which will have more resources into it and a little bit better defined scope and sequence. So he's meeting us halfway. We'll see what that production comes out to be. I wish that would have been done earlier, but at least we're moving in that direction. The other thing that, and I kind of brought this up, I guess very pointedly, in that as we go out to purchase materials which align with the Common Core, what used to happen with textbooks is that they were on a cycle, and the state would go through a statewide adoption of textbooks and negotiate contracts with the vendors so that we did not have to, as an individual district, go through the procurement process that the state of Louisiana mandates, because the state would have gone through it and put it on what they used to call the state bid list. Well, with this movement to the Common Core, publishers have been behind in getting materials that are really truly aligned and meet those particular standards. So it's been a problem in actually selecting appropriate materials. They have suspended textbook adoptions right now. So it's put us in a state of flux. So what we've asked them to do is, as the State Department is reviewing all of the different materials, they're going to be coming out with some recommendations in January on a math curriculum that they feel is fully aligned, and then also some materials in ELA which are a little bit more definitive than what they have now. But I've asked them, and he has agreed to look at this in negotiating statewide contracts so that we don't have 70 school districts, and then you've got charter schools and others as well, that would have to each go out and do their own procurement process and replicate that time after time, rather than the state doing that as a support for us as they normally have. So I think he's moving in that direction. And all of this stuff takes time. So while this is happening, we're still in there, and our teachers are in there teaching each and every day, which makes it a little bit more difficult to get through this state of transition. And if you flip over, there was a lot of discussion about the readiness of local districts from a technology standpoint, because we talked about how all of the park assessments are going to be on the computer, no paper and pencil tests. And that brought a lot of angst throughout the state. Many school districts are ready. I think we are, in the numbers of computers, the bandwidth that we have from a technological standpoint. Many school districts are not. And a lot of it has to do with financial resources and getting it up and ready. But you know, also from a child's point of view, when you look at very young children, 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, just the idea, on a day-to-day basis, if you've got 20 kids in a classroom at the 3rd grade level, you don't have 20 computers each, or tablets or whatever, at their desk where they're typing in their little essays that they're writing or their paragraphs. So one of our major concerns is not only would we be ready with enough devices, but are the children then used to every day not only being assessed through the computer, but even using those skills of inputting data and information at a very young age. They can sit there with their little phones and all and do things, but when you say, okay, write this paragraph and then type it in, that's a big thing for an 8-year-old that maybe doesn't do it that way every day. Every day he's writing it down. But on the assessment piece, when he goes to be assessed, then he has to actually sit there and interact electronically. Those were the kinds of things that we had some real concerns about. And as we get to where the kids are more comfortable with that. So what they're going to do with that is that we're each next fall, every school district is going to do a dry run in terms of a field test and practicing with it. But they've come out with the first year of assessment, which is the 2014-15 school year, that all the 3rd and 4th graders will be assessed paper and pencil unless a district requests that it be done. And the 5th through 8th graders will all be done on the computer unless it's demonstrated that the district doesn't have the capacity to test or assess everyone in that way, and they would get a 1-year waiver or reprieve, but expected in the 2015-16 school year to be ready for everyone. All right, from the teacher evaluation standpoint, now we know that our teachers have done extremely well on the value-added piece. In fact, this past year, as we all know, we were first in the state with the percentage of teachers scoring in those top 2 categories. And I expect that because our teachers are exceptional, they're trained well, and they really are very, very good. But with the changing of the assessment, everyone was a little concerned about, well, if test scores maybe go down a little because the students are not used to this, or there have been gaps in their curriculum because of the transition to the Common Core, would then that translate into teachers being unfairly evaluated just because the assessments are changing and for no other reason? So what is happening is that the state is realizing that they can't get accurate value-added data because of that 2-year change in the assessments. So until we implement the PARCC assessments and get that first year of data to set a baseline, and then you're looking at student growth each year from that established baseline, then that value-added data may not be meaningful and reliable and valid. So what will happen is teachers will still be evaluated in Compass, and as that Act 54 of, I think, the 2010 whatever legislature was, where 50% of their score would be based on student growth and 50% would be based on the performance rubric, the evaluation of their by their principals, that still is in effect. But the 50% that used to be the value-added data, that part will be suspended for 2 years, and the student learning targets that each teacher sets at the beginning of the school year will be used for the student growth. So the evaluation piece is still staying in place. The only thing that's changing for the 2 years is for the the student growth piece to be measured by the learning targets as opposed to the value-added data. And then the school and district accountability. What I'm going to do is to go through the actual BESI recommendation. So if you flip the page, okay, And the next 4 pages, which deals with what Bessie did in their transition policies, were just, Superintendent White is putting them out today. So I got a copy of these yesterday so that y'all would see them. So he's releasing these pages today. So on the school and district accountability, there has been a lot of discussion because some of the states in transitioning to the assessments, the Common Core assessments, have seen a tremendous dip in scores. And I think the misnomer is the scores really have not come down. It's the expectation on what a student is proficient. How do you measure proficiency has changed. Because here in Louisiana and nationwide, if we're on that 5-point scale, we considered a student proficient if he scored a basic or above, like levels 3, 4, and 5 on a 5-point scale. Well, what they're doing in the transition is they're considering proficiency only a 4 and a 5, the top 2. So every child who would have scored basic would no longer be proficient. That doesn't mean scores went down. What it means is the level of acceptability was rising. So with that in mind, a couple of the states did not make a transition to that new policy, they just went to it. So scores in New York, scores in Kentucky took a nosedive in their first year of implementation. So what Bessie is proposing to do, and I have some reservations with some of this, but for the next two, the next 2 years, for this year's test and for next year's test, as far as the letter grades that are assigned to the schools, that they would keep the same percentage of letter grades as we currently had this year. So for example, if 15% of the schools in the state were labeled an A, then when the test is taken this year and the following year, they would still line up the scores and the top 15% would still be an A. So instead of looking at the actual number of the school performance score and seeing what it equates to as a letter, they're going, he's calling it grading on the curve, which means keeping the same percentage of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. So the only way that you're going to go up or down is if you jump ahead of someone or someone jumps ahead of you and pushes you up or down. It's sort of like a, I guess, an artificial, I guess that's what happens when you do things on the curve. The question that the issue they still have not decided, and we're going to be meeting with him in January to look at this particular topic, is how are we going to look? Are we going to throw all the schools together, whether they be elementary, middle, and high, and say 15% are A's, 20% are B's, and line them up? Or are we going to look at them as levels? In other words, all the elementary schools in the state, whatever percentage were A's this year, we'll have that many A elementary schools. Do the same thing with the middle, do the same things with the high school, and the same thing with what they call combination schools that are K to 12 or have a combination of levels in it. What he feels, or what Bessie feels this will do, will be to minimize the impact of the higher expectations and students not necessarily maybe scoring as high as they normally have been scoring. And then when we get the actual first year of Park assessment data in the 2014-15 school year, when we get those results in the summer of 2015, set that as a baseline and then say, okay, just like they did with NCLB, we've got 10 years to get schools to move from this baseline to where, in order to be considered an A school by the year 2025, you will have to have the majority of your kids scoring at that mastery level, which is a 4 on the 5-point scale. So it would be a transition to get the schools up to that time, and they feel that as the lower grades are moving up, that in that 10-year process that would happen. So theoretically, that's what they're looking at. I have some reservations. You know, when you talk about a comprehensive school, under NCLB, we had 10 or 12 years, and the goal was that 100% of the kids would score basic or above. Well, that's never going to happen. You're not going to get 100% of your student body who are going to be proficient. And my concern is, I don't think you're going to get every school in a comprehensive school to score with the majority of your kids scoring at those top 2 levels. So we'll see. But that was the first policy, or the first transition policy that Bessie adopted in terms of how the letter grades will be assigned. If you flip over, the second policy has to do with the value added for the teacher, and I had gone through that when we looked at the recommendations, where the teachers will still be evaluated using Compass, 50% of their score will still be the performance rubric, and the other 50% will still be a student growth measure, but it will be measured by the student learning target, not the value-added data. He feels he cannot get accurate value-added data until after 2015, when the baseline is established, and then from that point you're looking at student growth. The third page has to do with fourth grade promotional policies. All right, as we know, in order for a fourth grader who takes the LEAP test to be promoted to fifth grade, he has to have passed regular fourth grade in your local system and then scored at the basic and approaching basic standard. So at least one of the ELA or math had to be basic, and the other one had to be at least approaching basic. That was the standard. If a student didn't reach that standard in the spring testing, he had to go to summer school, retake the test, and had to reach it in the summer session. If not, the student was retained. All right, for this 2-year period, while we're going through the transition, what basically they're saying in the fourth grade, that standard still applies. He still has to meet that same standard if he doesn't go to summer school and retake the test. However, the local school systems will be able to grant a local waiver on an individual basis to the child. So if we feel that the fourth grader is ready for fifth grade, if they haven't quite met that standard, and if we feel that they're ready for fifth grade, that they've passed everything in fourth grade, and that their ability level is such that they can move successfully to fifth, then we can grant them a local waiver to move to fifth, only after they attend summer and retake the test. Okay, so that's the change in that promotional policy to address concerns that parents had about their children who are then maybe have gaps in their educational career because of the implementation of the Common Core, maybe missed something in the second and third grade before they got to fourth in this transition. All right, the last page has to do with the 8th grade transitional or promotional policy. The same thing with our 8th graders, they had to meet that same promotional policy. We could grant a waiver if the child scored approaching basic in both areas and attended summer school and retook the test. We felt that they were ready. All right, what Bessie has done now is said, okay, for 8th grade purposes, if the child has not met the promotional standard in the spring testing, he still has to go to summer school and retake the test. If he still doesn't meet the promotional standards, the local school system may, if he has done everything else he's supposed to do, may move him to a different campus, a high school campus or another campus where he will be called a transitional 9th grader. Now what that means, yeah, going back to that, we used to have the old ATs, remember? Remember those? The 8.5s, we call them, the 8.5s. But there'll be a transitional ninth grader. That child will not enter the ninth grade cohort for the high school. So he has 5 years to finish high school and still be an on-time finisher for graduation rate, cohort rates. But during that transitional year, he has to be remediated, and he can take some credit courses and begin working toward high school credit. And that, again, will be at the local option if and done on an individual basis, student by student, if we feel that they would benefit from that particular move. So what Bessie has tried to do is to address the parental concerns about the children who they feel, parents who may feel that their kids maybe are not quite ready because with this implementation, maybe something in their background in the earlier years wasn't provided. And then from the teacher's standpoint, to suspend the use of the value-added data for 2 years. And then from the district and school standpoint, for accountability of keeping constant school letter grades with the same percentage of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. So these were the policies passed by Bessie in their meeting last week, and I thought that we would, that you would be interested to see what they were, and I gave you the information sheet that they've provided on each of those particular areas.
Thank you, Ms. Boucher. Very comprehensive report, and I'm sure I'll take the time to read over this a little bit closely, but thank you for that update. And I was very concerned with the push that we've been making to Common Core, that they would just kind of throw the brakes on and then everyone would start from scratch again. But
No.
these, in my opinion, these are the issues that should have been worked out and put in place before we began the Common Core, before we began the Common Core, instead of putting it there and then afterthought, oh, wow, hindsight is 2020, let's address these issues.
And I think if you had read some of the headlines of the newspapers where they had Common Core delayed and all that stuff, I think it was somewhat misleading.
It was.
Because the implementation of the Common Core is not being delayed. Common Core is in effect. It will continue to be in effect. What is being transitioned or delayed, if we want to use the term, is some of the effects in terms of school letter grades, how we use value. Teachers are still going to be evaluated by Compass. We just won't use that one component of value added until the scores then, we transition to the new statewide assessment or those new national assessments and we get the baseline done. But the implementation of the Common Core statewide is moving forward and is supposed to be implemented in every school in the state in its entirety. So it's just these particular points which are byproducts of, it's the effects, the consequences that students deal with, teachers deal with, and that the school and districts look at.
Right, because it is still proceeding, just as you said, some of the unintended sometimes consequences or known consequences that maybe the whole path was not thought out and put in place before it was implemented that are there. So the students will still be learning this, and I'm glad to see that they are looking at it, because looking at the Common Core myself with the transitions, there are things that they're jumping to in some grades that, those students that you have, say at the third grade level, maybe aren't ready for those because they really didn't cover it in second grade because it wasn't part of, at that time, the curriculum for the second grade. So you're trying to play catch up. You're trying to teach them something that if they had it the year before, they could transition to this, but now they have to learn this, so you're trying to work it in. And that's one of the effects I see that's in the classroom. And as you said, our system has done well with putting a program together to meet the Common Core, but unlike some states that said we're going to now put our curriculum together at the state level and give it to our schools to implement, Louisiana chose each school district is going to do their own and implement, and those districts that's having trouble, those seem to be the ones where it's a bigger issue than some that are a little more prepared with the aligning the Common Core. So, and we have a couple other members. Dr. Kraft.
Yes, thank you. Some questions. Change is always difficult, no matter what. We had the new math way back when. That was difficult. But any time that you put something into play, and it could be almost the same thing, but if you say it's changing, then you're going to get a certain amount of resistance, and also you're going to get a certain amount of apprehension, because anyone that's within this, the teachers, the school district, the administrators, they always have concern. Well, what is this all about, and what will be the end results? I was just reading, and this is from the Department of Education that they put out on that on school district accountability and the transition problem. So sometimes when you rush, then you can make mistakes. So I'm glad they slowed down a bit where we can take a look at this, and even though we're still meeting those, are teaching the state standards, which comes for something that the state accepted at the beginning when we began this program. But Ms. Voce, at some point, the total evaluation of this, will this come from the United States Department of Education, or will that be something that the Louisiana State Department of Education contracts with some group to evaluate our students? It won't be anything that we developed as far as the testers are concerned.
If we proceed in the path that we are currently taking, where we move to the PARCC assessments, which is the national assessment, those tests are being contracted out by by the consortium of states, and that same.
Okay. Which really the Department of Education, the U.S. level, will monitor this, or will the consortium?
No, states choose if they wish to take that assessment or not, so that consortium will be in charge of that. Now, if the state decides they wish to test with that national assessment, fine. If not, they can contract on their own to, like we do now, like Louisiana contracts to for the LEAP and the iLEAP and the end of course testing. So that'll be a choice state by state. That's why some states have adopted the Common Core but are not testing with the national assessments.
Okay.
The Archdiocese of New Orleans has done that. They adopted the Common Core standards, but they're not testing with any of the national assessments. So even though Louisiana has adopted the Common Core, then the second decision is, do we test with one of those national assessment consortiums, or do we just construct our own test? And the Bessie Board has decided to align with the PARCC, that consortium of testing.
Okay.
So
that's
and then
the
those
direction.
cut scores and levels of proficiency then will be set among all of the states who are taking that same assessment.
Okay. Now, you mentioned in this transition that that we'll fit it in a certain mold of that baseline, like 17%, 15%, and that's an arbitrary decision, right? Now, who makes that decision? The BC?
Well, right, the BC Board just made the decision.
They just made that decision.
That
so that's
they
firm.
we will be graded the next 2 years on the curve with the percentage of A schools remaining the same, B schools remaining the same, C remaining the same. So instead of right now, for example, if a school scores 100 or above, it's an A. If you're scoring from an 85 to a 99, you're a B school, and so on. There's a scale. Well, now every school will get their score and then the scores are lined up. So if 15% of the schools made A's this past year, then
Keep that
15% will make A's. So wherever that break falls, so you could have a school maybe now who scores a 95 getting an A, whereas it would be a B on the scale. Or if by some strange occurrence everybody did much better,
Yeah, and
you'd still have, you
96.
might have to score 102 or 103 to get an A rather than just 100. So it's going to be keeping the same percentage of A schools, B schools, C schools. The only thing they're going to come back and decide if they're going to apply the percentages level by level as opposed to just throwing all the schools in there together. So if 15% of high schools scored an A and maybe 20% of elementary scored A's, would you do 20% elementary schools this coming year and 15% high schools? Or do you throw them all together and do that one average percentage? So that decision hasn't been made
Whether you would keep that
yet.
percentage constant or not. That
Well,
everybody,
whether it's
like
all
a
schools in
cookie-
the pot
like
or
a
level by
cookie
level.
cutter, that's where you are. So it's sort of like entrapment, you couldn't get out if they held to that 15%.
Now, the one thing they did say, if you scored as well or better next year than this year, your grade could not go down. Okay.
That reminds me, if we had 1,000 students taking a particular standardized test, and everybody scored between 90 and 100, and they added them all up and divided by 1,000, and they got the average is 94. So half those students are below average, if you look at averages, so to speak. That's why I always say you can drown in a river that has an average depth of 2 feet. So we have to be very careful on statistics and how the State Board of Education or the State Department of Education defines this. But I feel comfortable that we're going to be able to weather the storm, no matter what storm and winds come our way. We've had experience with that, you know. So I was looking here that the BC will slowly raise the bar year after year. So I feel sorry for those students in 2025 on the results that they can expect if it's going like it's going. But I'm quite sure that right will win out eventually in cases like this. And of course, we want to be part of this to make sure that it happens in a proper and uniform way for the best interest of our students, because the students are what it's all about. That's it for me. Okay, Mr. Banner.
Thank you, Dr. Kraft. Any other board members? No. All right, well, thank you again, Ms. Voce, for that very informative update.
Very good.
And we will move on to item 7, which is an insurance item. Ms. Acevedo.
Thank you. Permission for our agent of record to solicit personal property insurance. Mr. Houghton?
We are asking permission for our agent of record to solicit proposals for our property insurance. The expiration date on our property insurance is March 31st. Takes quite a bit of effort to get our program, the final program in place. If you remember, it's a multi-tiered program. We constantly, every year we have companies drop in, we have to get a replacement for them. So it takes quite a bit of work. So we want to try to get a jump on it and get it moving.
I will so move.
Second.
Any comments?
No.
You vote the machine.
Vote your machine.
Motion passes 11-0.
Excuse me, Dr. Kraft?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Acevedo. We have an update on the Chalmette High Resource Officer. Mr. Warner, welcome. We don't get to see you.
Good evening. Thank you all.
Chalmette
Thanks for
High.
inviting me.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you here.
I appreciate that.
It's a pleasure.
Well, just historically, I just want to go back just a little bit with it. Ms. Voce and I met with the sheriff and had a very nice discussion about what possibilities we had and so forth. He then engaged Ms. Darlene Poche, Major Poche, who had just retired, to come back and help us get this going again. And so she set out a selection committee. There were, I think, about 12 applicants for that job of being resource officer, most of whom were very experienced officers. The selection committee came up with Sergeant Marcos Paguzza, who was, I think, a 12-year veteran of the street force. He came in, and along with him, eventually, we also began to house Tony Prescotta, Sergeant Tony Prescotta, at Chalmette. I just think that may be a temporary thing, but we do have 2 resource officers actually on campus at this point. The students have accepted them very well. It's been a great transition into the school. I think there are a lot of students who actually seek out the offices and talk to them about specific problems, whether they be community or within the school or home type of problems. I think that's a great thing. It gets us, they get to see the sheriff's office in a whole different way. I do know that they do get it. They do ask for advice from these gentlemen, and it's really been a very smooth thing. I think it's been, a good thing for everybody as it's developed. So we do have, as I said, they do counsel, they do listen, they do help. They work with students who may be tardy and students who have maybe some problems with, in the community with the justice type of thing. So I think it's been a good thing for everybody. We do have a small area that they look at as their office and so forth. So that's basically it. I'd like to ask any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions? Okay, Mr. Long has his hand up.
Well, just briefly, Mr. Warner, you said he has a small office there. Does he stay in this office, or does he roam around?
Oh,
the
no,
school?
no. The office is only when he has only when he's doing something that needs to be him and a student and that type of thing.
Okay. So he makes his presence known.
Absolutely.
Around the school,
Both of
right?
those officers are very much present as far as the students. They go to lunchtime. They're on duty outside with us. They do. They constantly are in the hallways. They go to the different. For example, they do activities. They're at our football games, our dances, our basketball games. They work those also. So I mean, it's a constant thing, and they're always with the kids. Yes.
Great. That sounds like a good idea.
It is. It is.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Egan?
Mr. Warner, I've had the opportunity to work with both of these gentlemen, and both of them are fantastic. I think you made a great selection, and I'm sure they will benefit tremendously.
It wasn't me. I want to go back. So there was a committee.
You didn't select a committee. Well, I thought you did.
No.
But anyway, tell the committee then.
They did a good job.
They did a fantastic. Both of these gentlemen are very, very knowledgeable. I think they will fit in well with the kids, and that's what we need. So I wanted to compliment the committee then, not you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Dicey?
Thank you, Mr. Warner, for being with us tonight. Sorry that we kept you so long before you got on the agenda.
I'm glad to hear Ms. Voce. Ms. Voce and I, we talk about these things all the time.
Way back.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for your presentation. And but basically, the resource officers have added additional support to you and to our faculty.
Yes, they have.
And support to the students also. Right. So it's been a win-win situation. And I just wanted to publicly thank Sheriff Pullman for working with us in providing these officers too.
Exactly.
We appreciate his assistance and help with this. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you, Mr. Warner, for all that you do at the school.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate your leadership at Chalmette High.
Well, I appreciate all the things you do for us. I'm very happy.
We know this program will work out well for you, and we have the highest confidence in your leadership.
Well, I hope.
at the head of the realm of our greatest high school in the parish.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Warner. Going on to the next, personnel changes for December 2013. Mr. Granberry, you've got the report all printed out.
There it is.
Any questions from any board members? Okay, Ms. Dysart.
Thank you, Dr. Kraft. Good evening, Mr. Granberry. I just wanted to acknowledge Miss Kathy Barbier, who is retiring. She has been at the central office, and she's always has done an excellent job. And we are going to miss you, Kathy, but we want to wish you a happy retirement. Thank you for your years of service. Thank you. Ms.
Can I just
Voce?
echo something? Kathy Barbier has been much more than a cafeteria manager here. She's a tremendous person. We're going to miss her here. She was at Shelman High School prior to her coming to the central office. And she was also with us during Katrina, for those several days that we were in the building. And when we still had power the night before, in terms of cooking and taking care of people, and she and her husband were in the building with us that time. So
That's great.
she is a wonderful asset to our school system, and while we wish her well in retirement, we know she's going to be sorely missed. But I tell you, she can't stay away. She does periodically come back and helps a little bit with the cooking here and decorating there, and I think we're going to see quite a bit of her in retirement. So she's just a wonderful, wonderful lady.
Thank you, Ms. Boche. She'll have a little difficulty breaking those apron strings there because it fit her quite well, and she enjoyed her work, and that was evinced by her day-to-day activities there, especially this last assignment here at the cafeteria in the school board office. I saw her, I believe, last week, and I could tell she was missing us. So we visited for a while. So Kathy, a great individual. We wish you the best. Any other questions for Mr. Granberry and his report? We thank you, Mr. Granberry.
All righty.
Keep up the good work. All right. The school calendar, Ms. Larson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with you as we are every year this time to talk with you about options for the 2014-2015 school year calendar. We did have a committee of teachers and administrators. I want to thank Vicki Lagman, Cecile Genevine, Kathy Newman, Donna Schultz, and Charlotte Main for working with me in putting this together. And actually, our work is getting easier and easier as the years go by because of the mandates from the State Department for student attendance times with the holidays, the way they fall, and our traditional holidays that we observe in the district. There doesn't tend to be a whole lot of options anymore for us to put out there. However, we did give our employees the opportunity to vote on 3 options. The first, school would begin for teachers on the 5th with their traditional 5 days of professional development. Students would report on the 12th. And the school year ends for teachers on Records Day on the 29th of May, and for students on the 28th of May with the traditional holidays. Option 1 would have the Easter holidays before Easter. Option 2 would have those same start and end dates with the holiday after Easter. Option 3, we did put out there the opportunity to end 2 days earlier by shortening the Mardi Gras holiday by 2 days. And as you can see, overwhelmingly, option 2 is the choice of our employees. And there's a breakdown provided for you there. I do want to caution you, however, and you see it labeled there as important, and this went out to all of our employees. As Ms. Voce told you earlier, we will be moving next year to park assessments, and that date from park has not come to the state as of yet. So there is no date on the calendar, on the state calendar for testing yet next year. That may have an impact on our calendar, and once that date comes out, if we feel like we need to revisit, for example, it may force us to move Easter holidays before Easter, depending on when testing would be. But we've always worked around the testing schedule that the state puts out. As soon as we get that in place and find out what that date will be, if necessary, we'll come back and talk about the calendar again. I would think, given Carnival date and Easter date, that will probably be fine, and it really won't impact us at all. That's our best guess at this time. So we're going to go ahead and ask the board to adopt this calendar as suggested by the employees, which is option 2 with the holiday after Easter. And should we need to come back and revisit, we'll know why we have to do that.
We have a motion by Mr. Fata to approve this. Mr. Long, second. Any other questions before we go to the vote? No, hearing none. Vote your machines.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. All right, Mr. Nicosia, you're on.
Thank you. Agenda item 11, bid tabulation for large and small equipment. Welcome, Ms. Bloom.
Hello, good evening.
How you doing?
Fine. We are asking permission to approve the bid tabulations for large and small kitchen equipment. This is a year bid. We had 3 vendors. We received bids from 3 vendors for small equipment and 5 vendors for large equipment. We tabulated the bids, and we are accepting the lowest bid with respect to the specifications.
I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Dr. Lewis. I have a second by Ms. Acevedo. Any questions, comments? Being none, would you please vote the machine?
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 12, bid tabulation for paper, cleaning, and custodial supplies.
Okay. This is also a request to approve the bid tabulations for paper cleaning and custodial supplies. We received bids from 3 vendors, and we tabulated for the lowest bid with respect to the specifications.
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mrs. DeFatta, second by Ms. Dysart. Any questions? Would everyone please vote the machine?
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, the next item is item 13 of the agenda, bid tabulation for our office supplies. Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, sir. In your package, you have the bid tabulation for office supplies. As you'll see, we had 6 respondents to this bid. Now, this is what we call a catalog bid. It's not a traditional bid. What we ask the vendors to do, since it's for office supplies, we ask them to submit their catalogs. We select 100 of our most popular, most purchased items and ask them to supply a discount rate off of their catalog price. We calculate the prices of the 100 most used items to come up with a total at the bottom and go with the smallest overall price as to award the winner of the catalog bid. So as you see, we have 6 companies that have responded, and some of them couldn't provide all of the products that we had requested or provide because they're not really office supply companies. They just offer some office supplies. But as you see in the tabulation of the 6, we priced out those items, came up with a smallest overall bid, and we are requesting that we award the bid to Staples.
Also moved.
Second. Okay, I have a motion by Mrs. Dysart, a second by Mr. Campbell. Mr. Dr. Kraft?
Yes, is shipping and handling free with this?
Yes, sir. Price is all inclusive.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And all of this is for your office?
No, sir. No, sir. We allow everyone to buy.
You're going to share,
We share.
okay.
We share our
You
business with
share.
others.
Anyone else have any questions? Being none, would you please vote the machine?
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Dr. Kraft.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Nicosia. We discussed last time about developing a resolution, and Ms. Larson has done so. We discussed this, and she got that ready yesterday. So I think with the situation that we're facing when we take monies away from the taxpayers of St. Bernard Parish to send students to charter schools in Orleans, if the state's going to take this and pay for it's one thing, but it's not fair for them to take our money through the back door by subtracting what that per pupil amount that our taxpayers pay for a student if they enroll in St. Bernard and take it out of the minimum foundation. That minimum foundation funds all students that are enrolled October the 1st or February the 1st during the school year, and this is based on what we get just like all the public school districts in the state. But now there's been a little variance there that they can take our money from us through, as I say, a backdoor situation of just subtracting out per pupil. I think it's $5,360 per student, and this was 23 students, I believe, Ms. Voce, and that amounted over, $110,000 approximately. And if this grows, the phantom students, that all they'll give us is an address and will not give us the name of the students that's attending the charter schools within Orleans Parish. So what we would ask you to do is that we accept this by joint acclamation if it's agreeable with this. Do you want to wait till the full board to read this? Okay, I think all of you have perused it, and it's in order, and of course we will send this resolution to members of our legislative delegation, LSBA, and other public school districts in the state, and there's 69 others other than us there, because eventually many of those will be impacted negatively, just like we are being impacted to this point. And of course this could grow and even be a greater negative impact on our resources that are developed and furnished by our citizens of St. Bernard Parish.
So you're going to need a motion to move this to the regular board meeting?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay, you can make the motion. Okay, Ms.
You want to
Voce.
second it, and then I'll...
Now we need a second. You second that, Mr. Okay, and now we got
Okay.
remarks.
And Dr. Kraft, you had asked us to work up this resolution, but y'all had also asked me to check with the state in terms of residency verifications and those types of things and guidelines.
Okay.
So I've been in contact with them at the state level. And as we know, there are many different types of charter schools. The type of charter school that goes across district lines are type 2 charters, which could be those statewide virtual schools or schools who have their charter from the state, from Bessie, and they are allowed to cross district lines. And the ones that we are affected by are several in the New Orleans area, in Orleans Parish, as well as the 2 statewide virtual schools. And they have sent me, as of this October 1 count, we have 48 students, 48,
So it's
who have
gradually-
enrolled in the virtual schools or a charter school in New Orleans. They have sent me the residences, but not, the addresses, but not the names of those particular students. I asked how do these schools verify these residences, as you requested, and each school has a different, demand of what type of documents that they require, but they do require some type of document, whether it be electric bills or rental or lease agreements, but that varies school by school. I asked the state if they ever audited this particular piece of information. They audit, but they audit in this way. They will do a sampling of those students throughout the state who are attending these charters, and they will request from the school the original copies of the original enrollment documents. And they just check the original enrollment document that the parent provides with the address and make sure that it's being assigned to the correct parish for funding of by taking their local and state monies. So that's basically the process. So if you're going to enroll your child, say in the statewide charter, and you send up information that says, I live at such and such a place, and that document is there in their files, then that's all that the state looks at. So there's no physical verification of residency. It's done by the documents themselves. Okay.
So it's really not a rigorous process there. And of course, it's just by address and no names.
No names.
No names attached to it to make a follow-up or a checkup from our end. Well, by any chance, did you have any records of how many type 2 schools were around the state?
I didn't look at how many are statewide. I do know that the number of charters that our kids, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at 7 different charter schools.
7 different charter schools.
The International School, which is in Orleans Parish. We've got a couple of kids at Belle Chase Academy.
Okay,
Louisiana Virtual School. The Louisiana Connections Academy. Those 2 are the virtual schools.
Yes,
the International High School, we have 2 students there. 1 student at the New Orleans Military Maritime Academy, and 4 students at Lycée Français de la Nouvelle-Orléans. French School of
Sounds
New
like
Orleans.
French.
Lycée Français de la Nouvelle-Orléans. I'm practicing my French. So those are
that very well.
Thank you. So those are the 7 schools charter schools. A great many, enrolled in the virtual school, and actually the international elementary school.
Yeah, it grew rapidly.
Just by the addresses that they sent
from
us.
23 to
by their
48.
computer.
So again, that's making a negative impact on the money that we have to spend on our students here in St. Bernard.
It's well over $200,000.
200,000.
locally.
Yeah, and that's for the people that will be going in for the
And
this
just
first semester and
reminding
the next
that all
semester.
of our schools, with the exception of our alternative school, all are A and B schools.
Right.
So.
And
many of these charter schools are C's and D's. So our kids then are going to a school which is rated lower than our schools here in St. Bernard Parish.
So realistically, they're not getting their money's worth of what we pay for.
Well, I guess we could say that.
And I'm sure we all get French at the high school.
Yeah.
Does Mr. Whitehead have anything to say about this, about going to A school, from an A school to a
No,
C and D?
because in the revised statutes of the state of Louisiana, charter schools are public schools.
Okay, vote the machines to send this to the full board recommendation.
Y'all voted?
Yeah.
Okay. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda, superintendent's recommendations.
I think
Ms.
I've
Voce?
said all I have to say tonight. It's just that we still have many of our schools that still have their Christmas performances, so if you have not made those yet, please check your calendars for when and where their performances will be, and the students, I think, would really appreciate everyone attending those performances.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? There's a motion by Mr. Campbell, seconded by Mr. Fata. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. The meeting's now adjourned. Thank you and good night.